All right. That was a very
Shitty
clap. Anyway, hey, welcome to an all-new episode of Yeah, I've Played. We are literally right now in hour 6 of our...
talking about this dang game.
Yeah, this is the final part of our 3-part discussion of Control. Last time around, we discussed the AWE expansion pack, and prior to that, we discussed the base game for 2 hours and 3 hours respectively, and we're here for another, probably I'd say 4 or 5 hour talk about the Foundation expansion pack.
Easily, yeah.
And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Foundation.
Please do.
I'll say again, I don't usually keep my notes out, but for this one, I feel I have to, or else I'm going to lose myself, and not in a cool M&M way. The Foundation, it's the first DLC expansion for Control. It was released in March of 2020, not quite a full year after the release of the base game, and it sees you exploring the literal foundation of the oldest house, and it gives you some insight into what the fuck happened to Marshall, which... Well, we'll get into that. And it also gives you a lot to chew on in terms of the relationship between the board, the former, and the oldest house. And also more just history about the FBC itself and its directors and how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, and how a director is known to the board as opposed to...
it basically like introduces the relationship between the board and the FBC. The FBC did exist prior to the board and prior to the oldest house, which is something that I think we speculated about a little bit in the first video, was like, you know, what did it look like before all this?
Yeah, because you'd have to think that before we knew, obviously, that it existed without this central place to exist in, because they seemed as though they had recently discovered it.
Yeah.
Based upon a lot of the things you pick up about the movements, killing people, and the house shifts, you know what I mean?
Unpredictability.
Yeah.
And as far as we understand, the NSC, the Northmoor sarcophagus chamber?
The Northmoor sarcophagus container.
That houses Northmoor, who kind of powers with his crazy hot flaming body. And I don't mean that he's sexy, I mean he's literally covered in flames that they harness to power the entire facility of the oldest house. What kind of infrastructure did they have to have? Sorry, did I startle you?
No, I'm just thinking about that hot bod.
Oh, okay. How did they power the place beforehand? You know what I mean? And we get little insights into that, but that's what the Foundation has to deal with.
So there's a lot to chew on here. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
This is like, you know, I felt like overwhelmed by the amount of documents that I encountered in the beginning of the AWE DLC.
Yeah.
There's like 50 in that first room.
This one, not as many documents, but almost like more dense.
Yeah, it's
in a weird way.
It's a little more sparse with content, but the details are almost a little more specific and give you more insight into what's happening. Whereas with the AWE, I feel like it was a lot of... not to say filler, but not necessarily... It was all giving you a little bit of information, whereas every document I picked up during the Foundation DLC, I feel like it changed my perspective on something in the game, whether it be the oldest house or the board or the relationship between the two or with the FBC.
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, the majority of them that were memorable to me were the audio logs from Theodore Ashe Jr., and you kind of find them in chronological order, so... As you go through this sort of excavation of the Foundation, which is a large, cavernous...
Excavation. Exploration. Foundation.
You rap almost as good as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
What's my name? Rock.
You know, as you're going through this, you're almost like... It almost felt like I was on like a historical tour of a cavern, and and it's like you stop and like you get like a little audio log. I don't know if you've ever been in a museum.
Oh yeah, you put on the
like,
headphones.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It
you walk around with a little...
Yeah. It almost felt like something like that, where it's like, oh, I'm learning about what was going on here and here. And so a lot of the stuff in the Foundation is narrated, like I said, by Theodore Ashe Jr., who is the former head of research who was succeeded by Dr. Casper Darling.
His father was also the director previous to Northmoor.
Right. So, yeah, so the lineage of directors that we are aware of is Theodore Ashe, who the Ash Act was named after his son there, Theodore Ashe, then director Northmoor, I think Broderick Northmoor?
I was going to say, I think Broderick,
I believe.
yeah.
And then Zachariah Trench, followed by current director Jesse Faden. So essentially, in July of 1964, director Ashe died. And director Ashe is definitely more in the old school of the FBC, and they describe him as a man who was in awe of the esoteric. And it seemed like he really spent his whole life, his main life's work was to find a place of power. That was like his obsession, but it seemed like he really saw the esoteric in he saw the paranatural world in this esoteric way and accepted it, accepted the mystery and respected it. And it didn't seem like, from the little bit that I was reading, that he was as scientific. And it seemed like he was more in the occult, like spiritual
For sure.
end of things.
I don't want to say anything was confusing, but we're dealing with two Ashes, who are father and son, who held different offices. And it got like, especially just like drawing back on those audio logs, it's a little bit difficult to remember who everyone was, their motives, and what they did and didn't do.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially when you're dealing with two characters who have the same name.
Yeah, especially like this is just a lot of their, their lives took a lot of their important. Oh my goodness, a lot of the significance that they have took place in the '60s.
Right.
So,
yes. So I mean, well, regardless, I will say, the little bit that we know about Ash's son is he felt kind of forced into his position, kind of taking up, the family business, so to speak, and didn't really understand his father. Didn't really understand, like, didn't have the same respect or awe of the paranatural world, and was just kind of like, I'm head of research.
yeah.
He was a much more calculated of the two.
Yeah.
But
For
it does.
sure.
We do kind of see that change. And
Yes.
he kind of develops, and that's kind of his arc.
So in July of 1964, Ashe dies. Theodore Ashe Sr. dies, the former director. He's succeeded by Broderick Northmoor. 1 week later, in August of 1964, FBC agents found their way into the oldest house while investigating a AWE in the subway tunnels of New York City.
It's just so sad. So sad for Ash, because he just wanted to find a place of power so bad.
Yeah.
And then the moment he died,
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah.
But that's such an oldest house thing to do, though.
That's true, because the idea is that, well, you can't find it unless you're looking for it. You also can't find it unless it wants you to find it simultaneously.
I don't
So
want to
it's kind
get
of
too
a-
deep into this, but
Okay.
I do have a thing that came to me today.
Okay.
What?
Shed some light on this experience.
Because there's, well, we'll get deeper into it, but
All right.
I'm trying not to get ahead of myself.
Okay.
Essentially, though, it was a big maze of caverns and tunnels until they eventually found a sort of stable area that had a large black pillar in
Yeah.
the center of it, this
monolith.
ebony monolith. Yeah. So Northmoor arrived, a little time after this. That they called him in to check it out, and there was a pillar that appeared in front of the obelisk, and on it was the service weapon. And he started talking about how he was now in communication with the board, and how he was the first board-appointed director, how every director before him was a sham, and that, basically, this is a new generation of the FBC. Everything before this was unofficial. The board is, I'm driven toward a greater purpose now. I have greater causes. I'm not so concerned with whatever we were doing before. We have a new kind of hierarchy here, and it's been established by the board. And Ash seems to be the only person who's like, well, first of all, that pillar wasn't there before. That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
And also, everyone is so gung-ho about this new venture that they're not seeing that this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
That suddenly they're just totally blindly accepting 100% of what these things tell them, just because it seems as though, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but Northmoor has almost a messiah complex to himself throughout a lot of it. When you a lot of what you hear about him as you continue through the story.
Well, as he got the service weapon, he was given powers. He unlocked his para-utilitarian, capabilities, and that's where his what becomes his uncontrollable heat. That's where he's first granted these like heat-based powers. So I mean, it makes sense. He's feeling like a god.
Yes, effectively.
It's interesting, or I think it's important to note that maybe not how he is now in his current form, but Jesse has been given tremendous more power than Northmoor was.
She has been given the most power that any director has been given. Yeah.
Pope touches on that a couple times. With
Yeah.
you're able to fast travel kind of between the control points, and I believe that's the only one I can recall right now. But
yeah, I don't think the other guys could levitate. And you know, Trench, I don't remember exactly what it was that explained these things. Maybe it was just the talking with Pope. But Northmoor also, after they found the Cerberus weapon and he was granted those abilities, he kind of had all of the teams like searching for more of those weapons within the Foundation.
he immediately had this weird like obsession almost with the idea of the service weapon and the fact that he was convinced for whatever reason that there were for sure more of them.
Yeah, which is funny.
Yeah, because it kind of was manifested in front of him. You know what I mean? Like you said, Trench was the only one who thought that was weird, and for whatever reason, he doesn't. Northmoor can't seem to really separate the path.
I mean, Ash was the only one who thought it was weird.
Yes, is that did I say Northmoor?
You said Trench.
Trench.
But
Fucking-
Trench was
of
also
names.
in the
A
picture.
A lot of
at this
guys.
time.
He was?
Yeah.
Yes.
Trench was an FBC agent under Ash, I believe. I think he was under Ash and Northmoor. He was someone who, and this doesn't really have much to do with the Foundation, but he was someone who didn't really want the position, but
Yeah, he fell into it.
yeah, and kind of just accepted it. But even like his few, kind of ponderings we have about his time before the director, he kind of seemed like things were kind of weird, and he wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. He seemed like someone who was kind of like, I gotta do my job, but man,
Yeah,
this
he
is
was more
fucking
just
weird.
kind of a drone a little bit.
Yeah. Seemed like a soulless fuck. Honestly. I don't know. I'm sure the job beat him down. But so eventually, Ash is, and this is Theodore Ash Jr. From now on, when we talk about Ash, we are talking about Ash Jr., who is the head of research at this time. He's told to create a sort of permanent base and research lab set up in the Foundation, and this is like what they're doing now. This is what the FBC is all about. And he eventually finds these ley lines, which through them, he finds that there's ley lines that are all kind of like connected, where the crossroads is that monolith, that
The nail.
and so that was unclear to me. Is that the nail?
That is indeed the nail.
Yes, it seems
Okay.
as though that is the nail.
Because I felt like they never said that specifically, but I could be wrong.
Well,
There was a lot going on.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
feel like they referred to it more than once. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but once more people come down with you, I believe they're directly addressing it as the nail, as they're taking
Okay.
readings of it and trying to research what it is
And
more.
so that is the same. That's the same obelisk
Object,
that
yeah.
Yes, oh,
that
yes,
they're
that's the
discussing
same
earlier.
nail.
Okay,
But
that
as-
was not totally clear to me. So that's good to know. So essentially, but from this structure, which is the nail, which becomes very important as we learn a little bit more about what's happening in the Foundation, all the ley lines meet there at that crossroads, and it's through these ley lines that Ash, which he says through like through a mixture of both science and like occult ritual, is able to create this like hybrid like talisman scientific tool, which is the control point. That's how the
Yeah.
control points
It's
were
almost
developed.
like a pentagram /
Yeah.
satellite array thing that he has set up to. It, to my understanding, it stops the oldest house from shifting, correct?
Yeah.
And murdering droves of FBC members.
Which helped them
the most
to
part.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean the control points can become kind of both dirty and corrupted in different ways, but that is what allows the FBC to go to the higher levels of the oldest house eventually. So essentially, when they got there, again, they were investigating an AWE that was in the subways of New York City, stumbled upon this tunnel system. Once they got that established with the ley lines and the control points, they could move up. But at this point in 1964, they're still really concerned with the Foundation because they're, all this new stuff is coming to them. And so as he continues to research, he being Ash, continues to research the Foundation, he finds these golem-like, clay humanoid figures that he calls the id. And he becomes attached to them. He starts naming them, which he realizes he probably shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
And they're benign at first.
Yes.
They seem to all have their own kind of like quirks and personalities, but they don't.
They're kind of docile.
Yeah, they interact with them to a degree, but they're not aggressive in the slightest.
No.
As the research continues, and especially after Northmoor's influence on the happenings in the Foundation continues, they respond aggressively, and there's a shootout between some FBC agents and the id. One of the id is killed, and 2 FBC agents are killed, and Northmoor says, all right, that's it. Get the fuck out of there. We are done in the Foundation. Everyone move upstairs. Theodore Ashe refuses to leave.
Says, nah.
And he hangs back with the boys.
These are my homies now.
And he's getting hunted by them.
Yeah. So they're not really his homies, I suppose.
No, but I mean, some people have shitty homies,
Yeah, you know.
Sure.
Everybody's out to get you.
But homies over hoes. And it is in that kind of time span from when Ash is kind of initially like, he doesn't really love his job, he doesn't really understand why he's there, he's not interested. It's kind of his fascination with the id and those ley lines that he's finding in the Foundation that we see him, like, he has a change of heart.
Yeah.
You see the passion develop suddenly.
Yeah, he literally says, like, I understand what my father saw in this work.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm connected to him. It's a shame that I can't, because I think he was already dead at that point.
Yes.
And that's what, like, he almost went like mad with it. Like, he could not handle his obsession.
Yeah, to the point where he was putting himself in danger by staying down there with the id. But eventually he does decide that, well, he has a realization. He starts seeing cave drawings on the walls
Yes.
that were not there before. And he starts to see this inverted black pyramid.
It always comes back to the pyramid.
And he's talking about how, like, how the inversion of it is, almost like a sign of like a distress. Like an upside down flag, or even like I think he mentions this, but this is something that always fascinated me when I was more deeply involved in the occult, was the history of the pentagram as a symbol. That, it's funny how the pentagram is like such a iconic satanic dark symbol, but it's the inverted pentagram specifically, because the upright pentagram was used as a Christian symbol for a very, very, very long time. And, there's lots of Christians now that would see a pentagram and be aghast. But it's the orientation of these symbols that gives them their power and meaning.
I thought it was real cool in high school because Slipknot has the nonogram, the 9-pointed star, which looks just like a pentagram. And they know what they're doing, but like I remember wearing my little sweatshirt. Jordan Hill was there. And it wasn't the best look for me, but I was like, oh, it was cool.
That's
Better
funny.
than the
It's like
Naruto
Satan.
headband.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're talking about.
I had a time with Nonogram. It was an app I was developing for grandmas to interact with their grandkids on an Instagram-style platform.
H.
Nonogram.
All right, I'm gonna head out, guys.
So I don't know if they mentioned the pentagram in this in the DLC, but they talk about, well, I keep saying they, but we're specifically talking about Ash.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's talking about how Northmoor sees the inverted pyramid.
Yes.
And he's thinking, like, someone must be seeing it from the other side. And he's starting to understand that the board has influenced Northmoor, has taken over the FBC, and he also believes that it was because of the board that the id started attacking the FBC. He believes that the board has basically like become a negative presence that's corrupting this whole operation.
Corrupting the oldest house itself. And something I thought was interesting about the cave paintings, it's like a slight aside, was that they gave him, it made it difficult for Ash to try to date any area in the oldest house or try to do any sort of carbon dating, because they would, like you said, they'd appear suddenly, he'd come into a room he'd been into before and there'd be a new painting there, and then he'd date it, but it would look like ancient paintings, or he'd date them and they'd come back as much older. And it was very. I
forgot about that. Yeah,
I thought that was very interesting. That was one of my favorite recordings that I found.
So
it's him talking about the paintings.
He does do a lot of research on this area. He goes back to see if there's any records of anything in that specific spot, and they find these pre-modern civilization records of someone talking about a like this like devilish tree that was in that same spot, and it's something that we touched on. We touched on. It's something that we touched on in a previous video, but it seems like at one point the oldest house did take on the form of a tree, and then
Yes.
it has these roots and everything, and then over time it did change its appearance to be compatible with
The world
what
around it.
people
More
were seeing in the
palatable.
60s.
It's changing with the times to a degree.
Not to linger on it, but that like goes along with the service weapon, especially or objects of power. Like how we talked about how like Mjolnir, like Thor's hammer, may potentially be one of those things, and how it would
Or Excalibur and all,
Yeah.
all those ancient legendary weapons.
and how it alters itself to be in line with its surroundings. And
Even the service weapon as the handgun altered itself when Jesse picked it up. Like
Yeah.
it had a different form. So we don't really understand like how that works, but it does seem like it has something to do with perception, basically.
Yeah.
And
or what you would expect to see as a weapon. It just presents itself, it seems, as a weapon, and then you fill in the blanks almost.
Yeah, and it's also whatever form would probably be most useful to you.
I suppose, yeah.
yeah.
Well, maybe not, because if the ancient times, the medieval guys could have had the current service weapon, that'd probably be a lot more useful.
Yeah.
Than just the sword.
Fair.
But
Well,
I digress.
It still would be linked to perception. If they didn't
Yeah.
know that handguns existed, then they wouldn't have been able to manifest that. But anyway, we don't know. We don't know for sure. Some big brain out there probably thinks they do. But as he spends more and more time in the Foundation, he starts to feel almost as one with the energy of the oldest house. And he believes that the oldest house presented itself to them being the FBC, almost as like a distress signal. And that they were sent into the oldest house to help it, and instead were corrupted by the board.
Yes.
And so now the board, through the director, is inhabiting the oldest house and corrupting it in a way that if Northmoor hadn't taken that lead with the service weapon, it wouldn't have necessarily happened that way.
Right, potentially. Because we don't totally, it's still, I mean, to me at least, I could just be missing something. It's still not totally clear to me whether or not the board was always there or not. You know what I mean? It seems like that's implied, but I don't remember anything definitive.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it seems like there wasn't a host almost for the board to interact with,
Yes.
like if the board had a presence in the oldest house,
There was nothing for it to...
yeah, because
Interface
and,
with.
and I almost think that the only reason the id were able to be corrupted was because Ash started naming them and interacting with them in a way where I think they were a blank slate before.
And then it's like with the
He
service weapon
put his
almost, where
impression
your
on them.
perception starts to affect. Okay, that's
And
really
that's
cool.
that's just my
interesting.
guess.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
really,
really-
I can't
that's
say
really
that,
cool,
but it's
though.
like because if the board did need some conduit,
Yeah.
the id were there.
Yeah,
But
fair.
I do think that that because even he mentions that like he shouldn't have done what he did in getting close to them and naming them and
Yeah.
interacting with them. But anyway, that this is all coming to say that he feels that it is the board's fault that everything's going wrong. And so he decides to return to the surface and go back up and serve in the FBC, to provide balance to Northmoor and the board's influence over the oldest house and the FBC.
Because just as Casper is kind of the right-hand man to Director Trench, so too was Ash to Northmoor.
Right.
Whoever is the lead of research, they have some significant weight that they pull around.
Right, and so it's through Ash that the Ash Act is developed, which kind of it's basically like a rights act for paranatural entities.
Yeah.
And I think Ash started to realize that like we are visitors in this world. We can't just be barbaric dominators of everything and exploit it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we can't just take these things and just suddenly perform autopsies on them, you know what I mean, and start experimenting on them because we have no perception of what their perception is or
Yeah.
level of awareness is.
And I think that this kind of what we see here in the 60s or 70s at this point, with Ash being uncertain of the role of the board and who they are, what their motives are, that's explored a lot more in the DLC with Jesse, because the major theme is that Jesse becomes, at this point, we have no reason not to trust the board. It's the board. It's the
Yeah,
board.
so far it seems as though that's just the established hierarchy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the board.
Period. When you get
I just
there.
assumed the board, the oldest house, and the FBC were all kind of one unit.
Yeah. But
Until
now,
this DLC, yeah.
with the introduction of the former and some things that happen in the Foundation, Jesse's perception on that stuff changes, and her,
She starts to feel more like Ash.
in that scenario.
Yeah, where she starts
Like
to
in
go,
that
wait a
position?
minute, maybe the board is having a negative influence over how things
Yeah.
are run here.
Which I did not intend for this pun, but it kind of rattles her foundation as to what she understood. I'm really sorry.
Now I'm definitely going to leave.
Wow. Lordy.
Matt's gonna listen to some tunes real
Going
quick.
to do a quick sound
Yeah,
check.
I'm just doing a sound check. I just want the viewers to know that I care about the audio quality on this video.
Definitely not because we lost.
Yeah.
So Ash serves until 1995. That's when Darling takes over. And that's essentially, part one of this discussion. The history of Theodore Ash and the oldest house.
Now parts 2 through 3,000 we're gonna be talking about.
Now, real quick, before we go any further, did you guys get into Ash's lab in the basement of the oldest house?
I did.
I don't believe so, no.
I almost didn't, and then I found. Do you remember you were finding old punch cards throughout the Foundation? If you found all of them, you could find access to Ash's lab.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
There were a couple little things like that where I found a handful of them, but I didn't.
And you're like, huh?
I didn't. Not, I assumed there was more significance, but I was almost like, God, I really like what's happening, and I
just
was
wanna
having a
focus
hard
on what
enough
you're
time
doing.
following.
It was the last thing I did for
Oh,
sure.
okay,
Yeah.
It was towards the end for me, yeah. But it's really cool. So there's the structure that's also it's kind of similar to the nail, except for it has a lot more utility. It's a vertical, very tall, just kind of like square building that's known as the warehouse.
Oh yeah, I was like, yeah, with the elevator you ride in.
Yeah. And it's very multifaceted. There's a lot going on with it. It's extremely tall. You can levitate around it at different spots and drop in, and there's a bunch of extra documents and like little power-ups to get.
And I think all the way in the base of that is where the lab is.
Yeah, and it's like you have to take those, I think was it 5?
I think so.
5 punch cards, and you had to activate them at the different terminals within that room.
Oh, okay, it was a similar puzzle to that. There's a puzzle like that in the main game.
Yeah,
the
so
the HRA
with this
creation
one,
device.
each card belonged to a different head of a different sector,
Yeah.
or a different person, different job in the FBC. So you had to look at the name on the card and the title, and then go, all right, does this terminal looks like it belonged to a security chief or
Right,
to the
okay.
director? And
Yeah.
you had to.
That's cool. Because I remember, I believe Pope mentioned something to you when you find the first one. When
Yeah.
you go to present it to her along with the.
She's like, you never know what
the
you
old
might
ID
find.
cards. Yeah, she's like, oh, you never know. You might need that to get in somewhere. That clearance thing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, all right.
So I mean, it's just you get a couple more documents. It's just a neat little thing to
Yeah.
see like his lab.
Yeah, and I thought it was a cool puzzle to like have to literally match it to what their personality or what their profession would
What
be
the
in.
stereotype is
Yeah,
of that. Yeah.
But when you first get down there, it's just like this cool like whoa secret lab kind of, and there's a couple things to see. But do you remember on your way out? Did you have a big thing happen on your way out?
I don't remember.
I had my fucking socks blown off of me because there's nothing down there at first, as far as there was no hiss. But like, at some point, you triggered one of those screeching ones, one of the screaming ones that shoots out like the death at you. It looks they kind of look female. You know what I'm talking
with
about?
the wings?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, that would have been a much better
Sorry.
descriptor.
The wings, yes.
Yeah.
The winged magma creatures.
Yeah, holy
Yeah.
shit. One of the, like a super one of those, like a mini boss one, comes
Mm-hmm.
out of nowhere, explodes, and is just ripping the place apart. I got very close to dying. It scared the fuck out of me. It's silent down there.
They're the ones that can turn invisible and then they reappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those ones are
Wow.
one of the more difficult
Oh,
difficulty
for sure.
enemies.
Yeah,
Difficulty games.
they're the most difficult of the regular enemies you come across.
You have to fight one or
Hands
two of
down.
those when you're doing the jukebox. When you
Oh,
do
yeah.
everything
You
else
also,
and you
I
get
believe-
back, that's the final thing.
You fight one a few times throughout the Foundation.
Yeah.
Every time
Yeah.
you come across another tree.
So, real quick, the other enemy that you do find in the Foundation is the Hiss Sharpened, I believe, which are
Oh,
they lunge.
yeah.
They have a lunge attack and they carry pickaxes.
and they fucking run quick at you
very
before
fast.
the lunge. And they can kind of like, rather than lunge too, it seems like they can teleport as well. Because at random points they'll be coming at you and then they dematerialize and suddenly they're somewhere else.
Yeah.
again.
Oh,
maybe.
And, oh,
I feel like I could be making this up. I feel like she's like, they're using pickaxes now.
She did say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
She
Which
made a
it was
comment
funny
about
to
it.
me because it was like, yeah, it doesn't entirely make sense because the Hiss corrupted individuals upstairs all make sense because they were all
Yes.
employees. Seemed like nobody had been down the Foundation for a long
No.
time, so like having a bunch of like miners, which
Yeah.
I'm assuming, of course, at
That's
one
what it
point
seemed like,
they
yeah.
were mining in there.
Oh, yeah.
But so it's like, are they reanimated corpses? Are they ghosts? Are they, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that was a little
story-wise.
unclear.
It didn't make sense to me.
This was
No.
the first time in the game that I got a real close look at the Hiss. I seized one, and sometimes you get that perfect camera angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
and
move
like-
in, give them a little kissy.
yeah, it's a little smooch. They're nasty. Like they're really grody looking up front. But
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is that I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be like a corpse that they had resurrected or not.
it's the only thing that would make sense. You know what I mean? Canonically.
But at the same time, it seems like the Hiss can only affect living creatures. So I mean, this is
Yeah.
just theory talk.
But you say that, but it's the whole concept is that we're kind of unaware of whether or not, like the fact that you can talk to Marshall through the hotline throughout the entirety of the Foundation, and later I can't.
Right. Okay. So let's get to that.
Yeah,
Because
it's an interesting-
that is very confusing
Sorry.
to me. How was she able to make hotline calls to you?
Yes, and
Right.
so it's kind of we're
So,
getting ahead of ourselves.
Essentially, you get summoned to the Foundation. You get a hotline call from Marshall, who's
Yeah.
telling you to get down there. Marshall's almost talking about you in the third person. So I think she does address you at points, but she's not really sure that you have what it takes to be the director.
And it almost kind of seems like she's more talking to herself
Yeah.
when you're getting the hotline call from her. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like she's having an internal dialogue that you're a part of.
Right, and it does seem to tap into Jessie's expanded powers of telepathy, because at one point she says to herself, "Man, I could really use my head of research down here." And then Emily Pope shows up. She's like, "Oh, you're here." She's like, "Yeah, well, you told me to come down." She's like, "Well, no, I didn't." She's like,
Oh, I didn't figure that out.
synchronicity, let's not worry about that.
Yeah, I caught that, and I couldn't really pinpoint what that was, but that must have been. There's clearly some sort of telepathic ability.
Right.
Yeah.
And Emily is just like, synchronicity, doesn't matter.
My other
I'm
thought
here,
was it
you
could have
needed me,
been
now I'm here.
it could have been the bigger, you know what I mean, theory. The old house compelling her to come down to help Jessie.
Right.
Because the old house compelled. I mean, maybe Marshall compelled Jessie to come down. Maybe the old house compelled her to come down. Who, you know what I mean? Maybe the board. It's hard to figure out.
It's hard to say. So
motivations.
what we find out is that the nail that we referred to earlier, which is that big black obelisk thing, it's a conduit between the astral plane and the oldest house. That's what connects the two.
It appears to be made out of the same stone that the astral plane is,
Yeah.
from what I can tell.
that like cool marble.
That, like, yeah, it's like an obsidian or marble or onyx kind of. It's cool.
So what we find out is that in an attempt to stop the Hiss from corrupting everything, and I think corrupting the astral plane as well,
Yeah.
Marshall destroys the nail's connection to the oldest house. And she thinks that she succeeded, because you get the
Yeah.
impression that she died a martyr, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
she feels like she did. She feels as though she saved the oldest house.
Yeah,
she's,
she's like, it was worth it. I did it. You know.
Also, maybe we'll get into it, but there was also a in Ash's office, the part that's not an office that it turns into just one of the tunnels of stone that you're more familiar with. There's a mini nail. You guys remember the mini? Well, I guess if you didn't go to the office, there was a mini nail there. Remember that? I don't understand the significance yet, but it probably has something.
I thought it was just like a sample.
Maybe it's like the pedestal that the
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it
the
was a
service
pedestal.
It wasn't
weapon
clear to me
had
what that was
risen up
exactly.
on.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But yeah, so we're thinking that Marshall came down here to sever that tie to prevent the hiss from getting into the astral plane. But
That didn't fucking work.
no, it didn't
You
work
did
at all.
wrong.
And are we at the point?
Is that Biggie?
Yeah.
Man, I know every word of that song.
Fuck you with the broom.
Several different levels of devil worship and horse. So what we find out is that Marshall was fucking wrong, and not only is the nail fucked up, which is not good, it's causing the astral plane to bleed into our reality.
Yeah.
Which is seems to be the major conflict
Yeah.
in the Foundation, effectively, is that you're like, it seems as though our reality, it's not that the astral plane is bleeding over, but rather swallowing our reality almost. Every time that it bleeds in, like a chunk of our reality is
Like
altered.
replaced.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
There's
like
a-
copy and paste. Copy paste.
Like some large sections of the Foundation DLCs find you like, you go into a bathroom and like you turn the corner to see a door and it's just the astral plane is there.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa!
Or you like walk through an archway in a cave, and then suddenly you hop to fly up, and then you're just in the astral plane. You're
Yeah,
like,
like, oh my god.
I honestly didn't fully understand that at first. I was like, oh, now I see what's happening. Like,
Yeah.
it was pretty intense. So essentially, and I gotta admit, I played Control twice. I played the main game twice. I played the AWE DLC twice. I only played the Foundation once. And so I feel like I have a much better understanding of the other parts than I do of the Foundation. The Foundation was really fucking confusing.
It was
in a lot of
also,
ways.
I mean, not that it's not all dense with information, but the Foundation it felt like the most convoluted and the one with the least definitive answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It seemed like because it seems as though they still don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the answers for like what AWEs are and what's going on, other
A lot
than
of that
like
is-
the
it's
motel.
established.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Most things are understood and established, and we've figured it out. The FBC has figured it out. Whereas the Foundation, they kind of abandon it, and we're like, let's just kind of out of sight, out of mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, let's not
which
worry
is funny
about it
though.
anymore.
There is a similar sort of like, let's just get out of here. Was what happened to the investigation sector as well.
Oh, yeah.
And with the, not that they don't still utilize it, but the motel,
Yeah.
where they kind of have that same, they're trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, but essentially they're like, this is dangerous. Let's just kind of
Yeah.
keep distance.
Yeah, just be safe.
So basically, what Jessie does is she's tasked, by the board with repairing these nodes around the Foundation to reconnect the nail to the oldest house. So the astral plane connection is repaired, and the board says, to assist you on your quest, you can have one of these weapons.
Yep.
So there's a new shape or a new form to the oldest gun.
So
the service
The
weapon.
oldest gun.
And it's called Shape. And they say you can only have one.
And there's two of them. There's Shape and Break. Or Fracture. Is Fracture the other
They're
one?
called Create and Fracture.
Create and Fracture. And it gives you the option to choose either one in that
Initially,
first moment.
Which is cool. It's an interesting, without getting too far into it, it kind of gives you like this kind of like Metroidvania style experience
Did we
the rest
all
of the game.
Did we all choose Create right away?
That's
I
the,
did.
Okay, I did as well.
No, I
almost-
didn't. No, I didn't. I chose Fracture because I was seeing power-ups that were...
Yes.
So
blocked off.
essentially there's this material, which I don't know if it was astral plane material, but it was some sort of similar like obsidian
Crystal.
crystals that you couldn't interact with.
Yeah.
So essentially what the new form does is with Create, you can shoot at those and it will expand them to create, bridges or walkways or connections.
That's
if
right.
you
You have
just
to use. You can pull.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's an ability that I think Fracture modifies the service weapon, whereas Create just allows you to manipulate that material.
Create modifies your kinesis, your telekinesis.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. But aren't you using the? I thought.
I don't believe so. I believe it's just the telekinesis. You don't, because
I
you don't
thought
have
so.
to.
It's not tied to the service weapon at all?
It's the same
No.
button, but that doesn't
No, it's the
mean-
same weapon as the telekinesis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same button as launch.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Well, I guess I interpreted that entirely wrong. But so,
Dude, hey, it's
It was a little hard to. I mean,
acceptable.
it's not that they don't phrase it that way for sure, because it seems as though they're like, we have 2 new upgrades available for you. You know what I
Oh.
mean? But they are the ones who provide you with both, regardless of whether it's a new. I mean, I guess they haven't provided you with a gun upgrade until that point, because you
and
build them all
they're
no, you build them at the
at the control point. true.
which is where you interact with the board. So
Okay.
And the
well,
board. Sorry, we're getting all over the place. But I think we should mention that some of this is really unclear because the board isn't speaking to you the way they usually do, and the way they usually speak to you is kind of convoluted to begin with. But it's even more so deconstructed and difficult to understand.
And they're kind of purposely, it feels like not. They're kind of. This is the first time where, until this point, the tone of the board is, you need to do this. You know what I mean? We need your help. Could you do? You know what I mean? Blah blah blah. This is kind of like, you have to do this. Do
There
this
is
right
some
now.
urgency.
You know what I mean? Like do it, or like it almost feels like there will be repercussions.
oh yeah, it's much more threatening.
Yeah,
There are
it's a much more like
Over-
a domineering feeling from the board.
Over the course of the DLC, and granted, so they don't have a voice, you don't hear anything, you kind of hear something, but it's all text. We all know this by now, but just to reiterate, the tone, like from what they were saying, I sensed like urgency, desperation, fear.
You can kind of hear a tone of voice in the weird, like Charlie Brown teacher.
It does kind of do that,
speak
yeah.
to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminds me of the ghosts in Killer 7 as well. They speak in a very similar way. But so Fracture breaks the crystals and creates with them.
Manipulate them, yeah.
So, and you use those 2 abilities to traverse to different parts of the foundation to repair these nodes.
Which is like, why can't you manipulate them until you are granted that power? You know, like what are they?
Yeah, I don't.
You know, why does the
I
board
assume
have to
they're
grant that to
part
you?
of the astral plane in some way.
Yeah,
It
so
seems as
like,
though they're, because the board can grant you the ability, it feels as though there's something separate from the oldest house almost. You know what I mean? Like
they
you said,
have
of the
some
astral
sort of,
plane.
But
they
here's-
have some sort of domain over. So it's like, what other things does this affect then now that Jesse can do this?
Here's where it gets complicated for me. And maybe you guys, and even you folks at home, could offer some insight here.
Those guys?
You guys.
Guys, however you identify, I don't give a fuck.
People out there.
Listen, I'm confused because the board wants you to repair these nodes, right? They do want you to do that,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Yeah.
That's what they're asking you to do, because they want to reconnect the.
But in order to do that, you do need both forms.
Well, only if you pick Fracture first, which feels like almost a little bit of a. I could be wrong about that because I picked Create first, but I was under the impression you couldn't pull the sections out of those unless you had Create.
Right.
I chose Create,
Oh,
so I don't,
really?
I don't know.
I was under that impression.
Oh.
Were you able to get to them before you had access to Create because you picked Fracture first?
I thought so.
Because that was like the first thing they had me do once I got Fracture. Was the next thing was I got to the point, did the door, I go in. You know what I mean?
Were you able to restore the node?
with Create?
No, you said you're saying okay.
I
once
was
you
asking
then
Yeah, I
Matt,
picked
got
Fracture first.
Fracture, okay.
I thought that I got like the first 2 and then got the other 2. But
Well, that's-
now I'll have to now I need to review my footage. I'm
Well,
not
no, that's
sure.
Yeah.
I
This
mean
is
that's the timeline. Is that like when I picked Create, you do 2, receive the other,
Right.
Do the other 2.
Yeah, I
right.
could only access the first 2 because the other 2 were locked behind the Create ability.
Yeah, because they kind of take you on 2 separate forks or.
So well,
paths.
and so let's talk about that real quick. So essentially, you go through, you find these like doors, you enter
Mm-hmm.
them, you enter the astral plane,
Yeah,
and you need to.
And the door is a rune on a slab.
it's like
Yeah.
a tree.
and you like
It's a rune of like
you
a tree on a big old
interface
slab.
with it.
Yeah.
and that transports you.
And so when you're in there, it is kind of like a weird version of the astral plane.
It's dark.
Yeah.
It's cloudy.
Chunkier.
And you need to do repair work on the
the nodes.
The nodes.
Which are just basically big black spheres.
Yeah.
That's all they are, with chunks sort of missing out of them.
Yeah, but there's also the hiss are interacting with the astral spikes, which I don't remember if we saw in the main game.
We did.
Yeah.
They don't interact well.
No,
the astral
they hate
spikes
each
are a
other.
separate entity, of the hiss. So it's like they.
It reminds me of playing Doom for the first time when you get the
Big time,
guys
yeah.
to fight one another. You're like, yeah, kill each other.
I could be wrong, but in my memory, I was using Fracture to break off parts of
Yes. Okay. Yep.
parts of the node where
That was
there are these
myself
big
forgetting.
spheres. Like there was like weird gunk over them. I had to break off the gunk before it reformed
Yes.
and
Because the way it had me do it, because I had create and fracture at that point, I would shoot off the chunks and then I'd have to pull sections out
see.
as well. So I think that must be the main difference depending on what you pick. Because I was curious as to how it would go if you had picked fracture first.
right.
Because it felt like it was. They made it seem integral to repairing the nodes.
Well, we keep saying that you could pick either one. Here's the reason why you could get both is because eventually the former comes to you.
In his big bug body.
He's like a dune worm.
And he
what?
was so
A dune worm.
He said a dude worm. He's like, what's up, man?
so the
what dudes sound
former
like.
the former is an entity that we don't really know much about. It does seem hostile because
You have to fight it in the other.
you have to fight it because you're kicking it out of its home.
In the altered items?
Yeah, so
Altered
essentially, the former, there's been reports of it in the astral plane, and we know that altered items have a connection to the astral plane in some way.
Yeah.
So, first off, the Arctic Queen fridge, from the Fridge Duty mission,
Rest in peace, Phil.
that's the first object that the former attaches itself to. You go in there, you cleanse it, and you tell the former to fuck off. Secondly, the pink flamingo is the other object that the former attaches itself to. You go to cleanse the pink flamingo, and again, you go in. When you cleanse an object, you go to the astral plane, you cleanse it through its connection to the astral plane. Well, what is obstructing things there for you to cleanse those two items is the former's there both times. And you're perceiving it as hostile, when you go to cleanse it, but like, would it have been hostile if you hadn't gone there with the intention of removing it from where it's decided to, from its host?
5 guys just came in here right now and told us all to get out. You know what I mean? We'd get a little hostile.
Yeah,
right.
response.
Fuck you. I will.
So
'cause I'm scared.
when
Fuck
you
off.
encounter the former in the DLC, you don't need to fight it the first time, apparently.
No.
Which I think I did. But
Yeah.
if you don't fight it, it will assist you later in the game.
No. What?
I definitely at one point in the game shot it, and it destroyed the astral plane where I was.
Oh.
It was later on, but I was in front of me, and I was like, fuck it, let's just, so I fired a charge at it, it hit it, it raged out, and it destroyed where I was standing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Then I did that boss
then I
fight.
died and it
He's
started
fucking
over.
hard. I didn't realize that.
You did well. Apparently, I fought as well. You don't. I guess from what I've read, if you
I think
don't
I read
attack
that as well.
It won't. It will be benign.
He aids you. It aids you in a battle later
in the
on.
final boss fight of the Foundation.
I've read
it
that,
will aid you
and
there.
I think
Wow.
because I died and had to reload, obviously, and respawn before
Was
I
it
had...
hostile again?
No, it was totally fine with me when I started back up, and then I was assisted by the id in the final battle.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I
it will.
didn't-
It will send the id out to help you, like almost like the summoned rangers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I was so just used to fighting this
Yeah.
damn thing that when I saw it, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck,
So-
not
And
you
I think
again.
I had the difference because I didn't do those extra side quests I didn't do the refrigerator quest, I didn't do the pink
Man.
flamingo quest, so I had no
so cool.
context of the former other than what you guys had kind of filled me in on. So I think that's why I ignored it at first as
Man.
just like, oh, this is a new entity.
There's something really magic about how we can experience the game in different ways and make choices without realizing you're making choices.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I made the choice to attack it because I had to previously.
Yeah.
You didn't. So you're like,
'Cause I
why
was
would
like,
I fight this guy?
I was like,
Yeah,
what is
this thing?
Yeah, I was like, what's
That's
this
so
fucking
cool.
cool centipede do?
It wasn't just like a fork in the road, like, do you want to fight the former or do you want to not fight the former?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they didn't tell you.
Yeah.
But you can't understand the former at all when you first encounter it. During those two boss fights, it does speak, but it's just gibberish. You can't get anything from it.
Nothing to deduce from it.
No, just like it's just random characters. When you speak to it in the Foundation, I think because the connection between the astral plane and reality is different, you can understand it to a degree. Not fully, but you get some words from it, which you could not get a single word from it before.
Yeah.
And basically, it offers you a deal, and it's like, you can have the other fucking weapon.
Yeah.
The other whatever you didn't pick for, you can have it. And
all you, dog.
the board was like, you can only have one.
Yeah.
The former's like, I'll give you the other one.
Do it.
Yeah, and then you get transported back.
That's the first point where I was like, I thought the former and the board had
the name
something
itself
going on.
implies, and the way it speaks to you is so eerily similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to the way that the board speaks to you.
That instance in particular, I was like, oh, they're equals pretty much. Like
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
Because like if the board were really fully in control, the former wouldn't have been able to just say, fuck it, I'll do what I want.
And it seems like maybe it's because their control is lessened because of what you have to repair the connection of the nodes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But so maybe without the oldest house, they don't have the power that you perceive them to have. Maybe it is the oldest house, this nail, the connection to the oldest house. Maybe they're drawing from the power of the oldest house. Just another theory, just another dumb, stupid theory.
And that makes me think that also maybe the board doesn't want Jessie to have both of those powers in the Foundation to like limit her control over this, or like, her attunedness, how much she's attuned to the astral plane.
Yeah,
see, that's what was weird to me. Is like, why, if they wanted her to repair the nodes, why not give her all the tools to repair the nodes?
It felt more like a power trip moment for the board.
Yeah.
It felt more as though they wanted it to happen according to their narrative. You know what I mean? So they wanted you to do these things, and then they wanted it to be like, okay, we've decided you're worthy of the second one now. To kind of give you that idea of like with Northmoor, when he was given the gun and told he's the director, suddenly he's like, none of these other fucking directors matter. You know what I mean? Like, those guys were all pussies. I'm the man. But then like, so
right.
I think
she did take the service weapon initially. Like, it wasn't given to her by the board.
No, she just picked it up off the ground. She's like, well, what's this?
Like, she had to pass the trial, but still, it's different like connotation almost.
But it seems as though the board is really trying to control the narrative. Is kind of what I'm trying to say here. Is that they're trying to control your perception of them and what they're doing. And this is kind of your first peek into that because of the way that they react when the former transports you back to that same, like, the training grounds, where you can take the test to get the ability or weapon, depending on what you've chosen. And the board's like, don't do this, Jesse.
Yeah.
You fucking do this, swear to God, dude, it's over. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much where they're at. It's like,
and there's no consequences.
No, because
afterwards they're like, we've decided you're allowed to have it. Our bad.
They were just,
totally our bad, dude.
They totally backed down, which was very eye-opening. Whereas, like, wow, they need us more than we need them.
Yes.
Was really what I came to understand.
And then you start questioning, well, why did they deceive me?
It does. It brings the whole dynamic into question.
Yeah, I bet how when the board speaks to you. A lot of the nouns are there's a slash and then it's like two separate things.
Yeah, it's like house/prison.
Yeah. I bet if we reviewed those, because the board has spoken about the former multiple times, I bet some of the slashes that it talks about, because I remember there being them, but I don't remember what they were. Maybe that might I'm sure someone has done the work. I'm sure that someone has done the work.
They basically speak of the former as someone who is like someone that they had a conflict with and someone who has like been dismissed.
That's what I've gathered.
They're like, oh, who? Whatever. He's been excommunicated.
Very dismissive and just
I think it also has to do with the what Ash talked about, where if we're looking up at this pyramid pointing down at us, then there's somebody on the other side. And so I believe because clearly the communication is so broken, you know what I mean, between you and the board. That it's just the dichotomy of the board. It's about the dichotomy of what they're saying could be taken either way. You know what I mean? In the sense that it is all everything going on here is about your perception.
Yeah. So in that moment when you guys were brought back to the,
it's just
I'm doing my best Billy Joe Armstrong.
It's pretty good. when you were brought back.
Fucking does that all the time.
He does. I was a big Green Day fan when I was like 14.
Why did you do that?
I think it's just like a.
Is he just like?
Hey, yeah, oh, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just his little vocal inflection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds just like.
You know, like when you're singing, you go.
Oh yeah.
You do that like every
You
time.
and, you and Prince, yeah.
I like to end my phrases with that. Yeah, I think it's cool. It's my signature.
I like it. I'm not knocking you.
Like a tennis pro.
We have a lot of hours spent doing dubbing that stuff in. But when you guys were brought back after the former, I was like, yeah, fuck it, have the other one. Like, I felt a lot of conflict. Did you guys feel the same way? Because that's when the board was like, don't you dare, but the former was like, you should. That's when I was like, oh, that's when the curtain came down.
Well,
and I was
you
like,
know,
oh, this isn't like a partnership here. This is a lot of different parties with multiple agendas.
I remember seeing images of the former in some of the cave paintings too, cave drawings, and it just seemed like the former looks like a big spider thing. It has
Cockroach,
Kind of
maybe,
like
with like tentacles.
It reminds me of like almost a centipede or something. Like,
Yeah.
when you see a giant
it reminds
centipede.
me of like a fucked up version of like the spider insignia on Spider-Man's chest. I don't know why. That's like what I see.
Okay, yeah.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bug-like. It's got a big eye, but
Big ass, spidery like arms.
yeah, I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's not. I think they're not trying to make it undefinable.
Yeah,
And you have
know
to
what I
blast his eye.
yeah.
Which
when
is
you're battling it.
which is kind of like a video game trope, but at the same time, maybe there's some significance there. Because when he blasts his eye, it's a creature, like it like spins the eye around, and then then you can't damage it, but then it spins its eye
Yeah.
around again. There's something there.
And
know.
I think it's interesting that the former has has that sort of form, whereas it seems the board does take the form of the pyramid, like that, like whenever the board is speaking, they're showing the pyramid speaking.
Yep.
So the
Oh,
pyramid,
wow.
the pyramid is the board, I think.
That's
To
so
a degree,
obvious,
or at
but I
least
never
the
thought about
conduit
that.
through which they communicate.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just strange that, you know, the board, if that is their form, it's very, you know, it's I don't know the word I'm looking for. But it's just it's a
Defined?
pyramid.
Yeah.
It's geometric, it's clean, it's angled, there's nothing, you know, it doesn't move.
There's nothing organic about it.
Yeah.
It's very
Whereas
cold.
the
and-
former is as fucking organic and bug-like as you can get, to the
Yeah.
point where it's like it is hard to even really perceive it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's perhaps when they excommunicated the former, they gave it that shape.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to
some end.
perceive because, like you said, it seems as though there's paintings of the former on the wall as well, and it's if the oldest house has existed before, you know, the board was associated with it. It's weird because Ash points out that it kind of tells the story of the oldest house and of the foundation, quote unquote, but just maybe that's what it's talking about. Maybe it's the whole of it is included, including the board.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would like to understand better, like, how far back does the relationship between the board and the former go?
Yes. That's what I'd want to know, really. There's a lot I want to know from this, but
Because, like, initially I thought that the board was maybe made up of former directors, but that wouldn't make sense.
yeah.
You know, I think we all kind of speculated that a little bit during the first video.
Yeah, because that's kind of the idea it almost gives you to a degree.
Right, as if the board is and the FBC have always been one.
Because
And it's like, no, the FBC had directors before the board was before they were aware of the board.
I think it's you communicating with Trench through the hotline as well is what gave me that perception at least, because I was like, if I can, like, also it wasn't revealed to you yet that it's just. You just have to be dead, you know what I mean, effectively
right.
to communicate with somebody through that. And
well,
maybe
or just somewhere else, because you do also communicate
With Casper.
with Darling. We don't know where he is.
Yeah, fair.
But also Alan Wake.
yeah, fair.
There is that one.
All potential paranatural, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it-
Para-utilitarians.
Isn't the meeting room in Central Executive where I know, right?
There is like the big pyramid in there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
not in the room where Emily actually is.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the room where there's the painting of every previous board director?
Yeah, I'm not sure who all those people are though. If they're all
Yeah.
directors, because I
Or just significant figures?
even if I were to think about the if you look at the development of the FBI and stuff, it wouldn't make sense for there to be more than one or two directors at most
if they're serving
before Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like it had to have been, like you just said, with the whole idea of the FBI and stuff like that, and like just national organizations being formed. It had to have been maybe, 20s, 30s at the earliest. You know what I mean? At the earliest, we're talking.
There wouldn't. I mean, unless there was some sort of like assassinations and rapid turnover, there wouldn't be like dozens of former directors.
And there was like probably 20. At least.
So I'm assuming they were like. Those were not just directors. I'm assuming that was like other heads of research, other heads of departments. Because I could see a lot more turnover for something like research or, maybe not even, but still, security, who knows?
Do we have any confirmation that there's anyone before Ash?
No, it doesn't make any mention of that.
Yeah, it seems like he could be the first based on
But potentially, I do think that Northmoor does say that former directors before him.
Oh, that's true. He implies that there's more than just Ash.
But that could have just been him being passive aggressive, being like, well, there's only one, so I don't know who else you're fucking talking about. You won't say his name, but you're saying former directors. There's the one guy, you know.
Just so I can say this so that I have it on camera. So if they do anything with it, I think I forgot to mention. Yeah, about to drop something hot and heavy.
Pee pee poo poo.
That's all, folks.
Come.
Big cum. They talk about how Darling has a romantic relationship with the
mold lady.
The mold lady, English woman. I keep losing it. Dr. Hammermill or whatever her name is.
I honestly don't remember her name.
I do not remember.
Don't think it's Hammermill.
You don't think
Can't
so?
remember either. But probably not Hammermill.
Does that mean something?
Nope, that just doesn't seem like
I think it's close. Matt, are you getting our top experts on the job to see?
I'm posting on Reddit.
To ask them, what was the name of the Hammermill
Make
lady?
a forum post and hope we get an answer by the end of this 7-hour discussion.
On the Control Wiki or Reddit. And
Anyways.
guess I'd like to think that that's not a red herring.
Dr. Underhill.
Oh, I was so close, kinda.
Hammermill?
Underhill?
Hammermill? I mean, it kind of rhymes.
You got the last. You got the last
there.
3 letters. I'll give you that.
I was surprisingly close.
No, but yeah, it seems like in the past they did have a romantic relationship that kind of they became distant over time.
And when Jesse questions Underhill, Hammermill about Casper,
Hammerhill.
she's a little rough around the edges, but it seems like she might know more than she's telling you. So I wouldn't maybe.
I got the impression that she was just kind of like
scorned.
Because you see like his, I think it's his farewell letter to her or something like.
That's right.
You see that they're kind of just like, I wish you all the best, but we can no longer be together.
There is that.
So I think she's just being coy and distant because like. She doesn't want to open an old wound. That's the impression I got.
Yeah, it seems like it just kind of had to end. They had to be very cold and professional about it, and it's just maybe it's just because it's things that
I know what you mean. She
says
she'll say something like wherever he is, or she says something that does imply
there was
like
something that
I think with your knowledge you could be like.
Like maybe that was, and this is we are absolutely in theory territory in the 90th mile of this tangent.
Talking about characters uninvolved in this. DLC.
He's not even in it at all. I wonder if she knows something, and maybe that was a formality that they were forced into fabricating. But I think it's probably more likely.
The only reason I don't think so is because she's a freelancer.
Yeah,
she doesn't work for the FBC.
That's right.
And I think she's just more implying that she's like, oh, I know him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure he's fine wherever he is.
Yeah, because
I'm sure he just went off again on one of his little, you know what I mean?
She doesn't want to acknowledge that she had a relationship with him.
Mm-hmm. That's probably more likely.
It's probably you. It seems like you only know because you're going through everybody's fucking mail.
Let's get this back on track. Essentially,
maybe that's why she's so spicy. She's like, okay, you read my fucking mail, really cool. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that actually.
what we find is that Marshall pissed off the board when she broke the nail.
Yes,
and they broke her HRA.
Yes,
and allowed her to get his corrupted. And the final boss of the Foundation DLC is his corrupted marshal.
Sad times are original
It's
high.
painful. But I was so confused, like, because I think all you get in the base game is, where'd Marshall go? She had to take care of something.
Yeah,
And I was like,
Yeah.
that's fucking weird that
Even
they
Arish,
just...
Yeah.
our boy Simon, he's just like, yeah, I don't know. She's going to like the quarry or something. I don't know. She's always doing crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
it was super dismissive, and I was just
Yeah.
like, this main
what do you mean you
character,
don't know?
it made me feel like I missed a huge thing.
Yeah.
No, because I mean, to be fair, it seems as though that's kind of their attitude towards everyone who's missing, or
Yeah.
anyone who's not around. You know what I mean? Like, I get she's a head of a department, but it seems like even Arish, right? That's his name. Arish, who's like the
It
now.
rhymes with hashish.
That'll help me remember for
I
sure. But like, because he's the now acting head of security, correct?
Yeah.
When you kind of mentioned that you don't know where the actual head of security is, he's like, well, I couldn't really be bothered. I got my own shit to handle right now.
Yeah.
That's kind of everybody's attitude. Is they're like, oh, Marshall's gone? She's doing something. You
And
know
it
what I mean?
does-
Or she's dead.
And I will say, of course, I know who the former head of security was. Of course, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Salvador.
Yeah. I don't know. That was just such an obvious thing.
You guys were like, I don't remember seeing that name at all. And I'm like, I paid so much less attention to this game and 100% remember Salvador.
Well, I didn't remember it when we were discussing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
he's
our-
one
in
of
our
like
first
his,
video.
he's one of the earlier,
He's one of the bosses.
earlier
Yeah.
bosses.
He's a
you
hard
fight.
boss.
Yeah, but
He
he's
kicked
one of
my
like
ass.
the early on bosses.
Because he has the triple launch and he has shield.
Yeah.
And he just fucks you up.
Badass boss.
Yeah.
Great set piece.
Yeah, very cool.
Anyway,
Totally forgettable.
so you have to fight Marshall, and like we said earlier, if you don't attack the former, the former is beyond gender. The former will send in id to help you, which was really interesting to me that both the former can influence the id.
Yes.
We don't know this for sure, but Ash.
Wait. The id look like the astral spikes. Yeah.
No, the id look like little clay men.
Yeah, they look almost like the astral, like
They're I believe you're encountering the id when you're doing the TV mission.
Oh, those
Yes.
freaks. Okay, all right. Because I feel like I remember somebody helping me in that fight, but I definitely...
You may have sent in rangers,
I could.
Yeah, you get
that's-
rangers beforehand.
That's right. All right.
but regardless, it was interesting to me that we don't know this for sure, but Ash Jr. theorizes that the board had a negative influence on the id and like kind of caused them to attack
yeah.
the FBC. It's interesting to think that both the former and the board could have influence over the id. And what does that
yeah.
mean?
Well, because we kind of speculated earlier on them having a similar, or at least being on the same level as far as their abilities and what they're capable of,
Right.
which would kind of reinforce the idea that the name former is kind of. I immediately went like, oh, former board member. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Of
Like,
course,
it's
of course,
like,
of course.
ah.
It's just interesting because it makes me wonder, were the id always inhabiting the oldest house? And are they just this blank slate that astral plane entities can kind of manipulate? Like, it's something that I don't fully understand.
Quick aside to, just to fucking. I don't know if I'm understanding properly, because the id aren't the same thing as like the weird like black faceless people you encounter in the astral plane, are they?
Those are the spikes, the astral spikes. Those are not the same beings. But
no. The astral spikes are the literal spiky.
Yeah.
What? Then
Yeah.
what's the name of the...
Are the balls that go around.
I thought the... Oh, you're right.
Who are
Fuck.
the little soldiers with guns?
I can't remember
I
what
don't
they're
know
called.
what those are
Little
called.
astral
thought-
entities, or what are
I
they?
thought those were the spikes.
No, astral
Shit.
spikes are the ones that look
No,
like...
those are the fucking just the
Spikes.
inconceivable balls.
Yeah,
that
I
are
don't know
flying
what
around.
those are called. You fight them from time to time throughout different
They have
trials.
names.
They
The
also
names are
fight
early
the
on.
hiss when you're in a couple of the astral leaks
Right,
as well.
I don't know what they are.
Yeah,
They're-
I'm not sure.
I mean, the board uses them during the initiation trials anytime
Yeah.
you get a weapon. So there's some kind of entity that...
I just wasn't sure if they were on a similar, if they were similar to the id, or if there was
They
ever
could-
anything I missed. You know what I mean?
I didn't really get that. My interpretation was that they're almost like the astral plane version of the id, in the sense
Okay.
that they seem to kind of only do whatever the board wants them
Yes.
to.
They're the tools that the board can make use of.
It seems that way.
Their-
But again,
their game
that was
pieces.
unclear to me. If anyone has any insight on that, that's another thing I'm
Or there's
kind of curious
I
about.
had like a weird theory that like not like a total. It's like a very light idea that like the id are more like a physical manifestation of the oldest house, or a tool that they use that's now being corrupted by the board or by the former. You know what I mean? But previous to that, the oldest house would use them to carry out. You know what I mean? Physical things that they that the
Yeah,
oldest
and
house
they're kind of
can't.
like, like Gollum, like sort of, form and everything. It's like if they are made of clay, if they are made of earth, like it would make sense that the oldest house could,
Manifest
create
those,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, out of its own materials. And so,
And it would make sense if the hiss sharpened or whatever. If they looked like those things, that would make a lot more sense. You're like, oh,
if
that's
it's
just
the hiss corrupting the id.
the id, yeah. But they the hiss
could
sharpened
be,
were
could be.
when I looked at him, it was definitely a human.
Yeah.
Like he had
They had
eyeballs.
very
He was
human
ugly.
features, yeah.
So, once you defeat his corrupted Marshall, you return to the surface, and you're kind of like, well, I'm going to run things differently.
Yeah.
I'm not going to... And the board says something to you, and you're like, whatever, bitch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. You're like
You kind of
yeah.
give them a like.
I think she says,
Like-
fuck you, too. Like,
Yeah.
which is... It's funny that she's...
She's really changed her mind pretty aggressively.
Yeah, she's really
Yeah.
over it with them, but she basically says, Jesse essentially is like, yes, of course, the board's in control. Way to go, guys.
Winky wink. You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
she's like, I don't know enough about this to say, fuck the board, let's just get rid of them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be completely at their beck and call.
Yeah, which is a perspective I think unique to Jessie as a director because she had no previous connection to the FBC.
Right.
Whereas Trench was a drone,
Yeah.
as we kind of talked about earlier. So of course, when he gets into the seat of director, he's just going to be like, "Yep, we listen to the board. The board tells us what to do. We keep going. I'm not
Kinda
trying
just
to
doing
make
his
fucking
job."
waves." Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially it seemed like everybody, according to Ash, was
Yeah.
kind of just like with the new program.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, I think the only director prior that we know of was Ash Sr., who was not
Associated.
controlled by the board,
Yeah.
basically. But here's the thing that went over my head entirely, completely missed it.
Okay.
After all that's done, before you go to the surface, this totally went over my head, and I actually had to go back and watch someone else's video of
Yes.
gameplay to see this.
You watched somebody else's video?
I wasn't signed in to YouTube. I actually you can use a proxy thing so it doesn't count, doesn't give them views.
Oh,
okay.
there you go. Okay, good job.
You're only supposed to be watching.
I know.
Hidden
I only
machine
watch hidden
content.
machine videos.
Yeah.
That's why we have any subs. I just create.
We're
New
all of
accounts
our
every
own
time.
views.
The former, as you're leaving the battle, the former crawls away into the shadows and goes into the depths
Of the foundation.
thus implying that the former has escaped the astral plane
Yep.
and is now in our reality, which
That didn't hit me.
I did not see it. I
You didn't see it? You
fucking
were
see
looking?
it.
Yeah, I didn't.
I was looking.
I think it's hilarious that you didn't notice.
Yeah,
Because of how much else you've picked up on throughout
If
the whole
I
thing.
did notice,
but, yeah.
I must have just forgotten immediately and was like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
it
crawling
was
away."
it was another moment that was super foggy for me because it's one of those things where it's like, did it just retreat into the recesses? Is that happening in reality? Is that just something? Are we kind of seeing a
I
bleed
feel like
over
if
into the
I
other
was
reality?
aware of it, I was like, "Oh, I'm still seeing the astral plane or something."
Which is
Yeah.
kind of my thought, was that it was kind of like almost in the foundation, it's almost implying that because an important point to make is that while Jessie fixes the connection to the nail, and while she restores kind of order to the oldest house and stops the astral bleed that she was worried would overtake our reality, she doesn't reverse any of the damage that has happened. She can't get rid of any of the astral bleeds that are currently there. So it seems to
True.
me that maybe they are still kind of interconnected within the foundation because that's where the bleeds are taking place or still existing.
Right, but
Which, yeah.
but an entity
Yeah, could
bleeding
mean
through
that
is different than
yeah.
a rock bleeding through.
Oh no,
Yeah.
absolutely. No,
That has
I
some
hear you. Yeah.
implications. So yeah,
I think it could be open to interpretation because
Yeah.
what you're saying, we could just be seeing. You can see the astral plane
Yes.
in our reality. Does that mean it's in a reality or is it in the astral plane?
Yeah.
That's not
Because I think
entirely
the
clear.
whole
especially when you're in a place where the lines are being blurred.
yeah,
Right.
the DLC to me though seems to be about like the theme of it is about perception and about perspective and about, you know what I mean? Not necessarily can you trust what you're seeing, but is what you're seeing the only thing that can be seen. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so I feel like that's maybe what it's, which is just, maybe I'm just being super convoluted, you know what I mean? And fucking like trying to be too big brain about it. But it's almost like it's maybe being like the separation between these two realities has gotten looser. You know what I mean? Whereas maybe it still is in the astral plane, but that's not really too far away anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think both interpretations are just as valid, and I don't really know where to land on
Yeah,
it.
it's hard to...
A reason that, I saw the former, like, and you probably saw it visually with your eyes, but maybe didn't. In that moment, we kind of glossed over it. That boss fight with Marshall was fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was
like,
pretty
that had
cool.
my
Oh,
blood
Great
pumping.
boss fight.
It was really cool. It finally felt like
I
fighting.
don't really play the game for the combat, actually. I like their story.
Everything else is boring.
In the fight against.
I wish it were just like kind of like a text adventure.
Sure, more
Honestly.
outfits.
I like the outfits. The fight
I'm
against.
mad that there isn't like a sexy outfit, you know?
I'm mad there's
I don't
no
know, the one-
romance options.
That skin tight one you were wearing.
The sweats were pretty good.
Sweats.
Prime candidate
Ooh.
7.
Oh boy.
Anyway,
Not a lot
no.
left to the imagination.
Great boss battle.
Yeah, really cool boss battle. In the fight against Edge, like Mirror Jesse from that one. That fight was hard.
That
I
was
know,
one
it's
for
just
me.
That was a
up
really
until
hard-
Hartman.
Yeah, that was a really hard fight.
I actually didn't finish that one. I used assist on that one.
Did
You
you?
cheated?
I only used assist once the whole game, and it was during like the Battletoads runaway camera segment.
Oh, well,
Why?
we'll
Was
get
on the
into that
train
in a
car.
moment. Here.
Yeah.
That's the only time I
did
used
not.
the assist.
I've seen multiple people saying they struggled with that.
I didn't.
Relating
But
to
I
check-
love that. But
was
Yeah, we
long.
gotta get into it.
Anyways,
But
we'll get into that.
The main point of getting that is that the fight was really cool. In the fight with Edge, like, I don't know if that's how you say it. That was cool because it was like equal footing. Like, she had all of your powers. It's just like fighting
Yeah.
Dark Link or Dark Samus.
Shadow Link.
Shadow Link. Sorry, everybody. Sorry,
Mario.
gamers.
It's
But
like fighting Metal Mario.
fighting Marshall, Metal Mario was a big one too. Fighting Marshall was just bad. She's badass.
Yeah, I mean,
like
she-
she's so agile, and then you have to dodge the.
Well, it's just the whole idea that
mobs.
like she is clearly this very, like everybody has this faith in her that they're like, yeah, she's gonna be fucking fine. You know,
Yeah.
what I mean?
It
Like,
seems like
nothing's
she
gonna
was
kill her.
second in command, almost. I mean, kind of first in command, really.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, she
the
ran,
director
like-
still answers to the head of operations.
It felt like
Yeah,
a
exactly,
Dragon
'cause
Ball
the
Z
operations
fight,
is-
dude. Like, I was dashing
did
around,
kinda,
she
yeah.
was dashing around. It was just
Yeah.
badass.
We didn't really directly say it as much in this discussion as we fawned over it in the past discussions, but it is again a very breathtaking, like the scenery.
Visually?
It's all,
Oh my
visually,
God.
visually,
Visually, the whole
entire
thing looks great, and it's
Yeah.
such a welcome change of pace to not
Yes.
be in the oldest house.
in this, and while it was still like, it's not a vibrant game, but it's still every piece of scenery is very alive.
Yeah.
And then finally, when you're underground, when you're in the Foundation, it is a bit more vibrant. And like you said, it's nice to not just be
that
like
red
this
sand.
brutalist, gray,
Yeah.
brown. You know what I mean? Like stone, granite, black, wall.
It's
You know what I
like
mean? Like boxes,
Wide
geography.
open white space. It's
Yeah,
like,
and you're like, oh,
whoa.
hills and flowing because everything in the rest of the game is so hard, so angular and geometric. and
Right
this
angles
is,
everywhere.
yeah, and
Yeah.
this is very smooth. You
Almost,
know what I mean? It's
organic.
yes.
Bizarrely. Which
It almost is, which kind of like harkens back to the idea that the oldest house is a living thing, and this feels like you're really inside of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're in the Foundation.
That is what I would anticipate something like that to look like.
yeah.
So
But yeah, so coming out of that fight, when you're like, oh my God, I just killed Marshall thought, as you're putting that all together, if you're also at the same time listening to the dialogue between Jesse and Emily Pope as they're talking about everything, and then in the background you see
yeah,
the
it is only a shot in the background. It's not like the camera doesn't go like. It
doesn't follow
Look at
him.
this.
Hey, look at that
you just-
guy.
It's just happening.
I love how he's kind of like a cartoon. He just, he's zoop. He's got a lot of fluidity to the former's movements.
big
So
ol',
it's pretty crazy.
So it's not
The implications are
Too-
pretty insane.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not too hard to believe that you were a little overwhelmed. I was a little overwhelmed that I didn't fully process the
Yeah.
implications. But yeah,
kinda
And again,
opens-
playing the rest of the game twice helped me a lot. I think if I played the Foundation twice, I wouldn't be as confused as I am today.
yeah.
fair. For sure, fair.
So the movie.
There's two like big side missions. One having to do with a television set, and the other one having to do with a haunted film camera.
the TV set. Why don't we start with that one? That was the only quest I missed in this entire game.
Yeah, I didn't do the TV set.
I
What?
mean, I went back and I'm sorry. Up until this point, I managed to complete every mission before completing that part of the game.
Okay.
Like I beat every main mission in the main game before doing the final mission. Everything in the AWE before defeating Hartman. But I had the Marshall fight before I had the TV, so I had to go to the Google. I typed into the Google. I said, "Where's Control? Why I miss a mission?" Because I knew there's 49, I think, and I knew I only had 48 completed, and I was like, "What did I miss?" This one was cool.
Yeah. So the television set can essentially, like, the light of it can kind of like control entities.
Yeah.
If you're in the glow of it, you freeze.
Social commentary.
And I feel like you're seeing an image of of Ati on the set.
Ati's there?
Am I wrong? I could be wrong about that.
I did this.
I thought he was on the set.
One of the last things I did in the game, so it's a little fuzzy.
Yeah, it's the most recent thing I did, so I'm not remembering it as well. It's the stuff I did 3 months ago.
I don't know. I was like probably like 2 a.m. I was falling asleep.
No, but essentially, if you're going through this like very dark area, and the only light is the light from the TV, and so you have to pick up the TV, manipulate it as a telekinetic object, and there's enemies that you can't fight.
Yeah.
That's the id, I believe.
Yeah.
And
hundreds. There's a bunch.
Yeah,
of
they're
them.
everywhere, and they're aggressive. And they're very similar to the mold. Creatures. Could even be.
Oh yeah.
The same code.
Yeah.
At the base, but
slow, but they'll fuck you up.
Yeah, and you have to use the television to kind of like
pacify them as you get through.
and get through. And so that's an interesting mission.
That was sick, and I like at the end how you have to throw it back in that little containment center, the little containment thing.
Oh right, yeah. And so what happened initially was that some people, like, basically people couldn't like not look at it.
Yeah.
And so even though it was in the containment chamber, like somebody felt like just so drawn they had to pull it out and shit. And
it's similar to that one altered item that was in containment where when you go in there, all of the there's a bunch of rangers and they're staring at it. They're all facing the same way.
Oh, it's when you get C's. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you wind up killing them all.
Yes. He sure did. But the other major thing, did you do the what was the item? Was it the camera?
Yeah, I said it did. That was the only time I used the assist mode.
So there's a camera that when it's used, like people have like vivid hallucinations of themselves, like in like action scenes.
Yeah, it's a much more dramatic.
And then it produces like a tape of that scene,
which only transpired entirely within that person's mind.
Right.
Which is
right. So it somehow like records your thoughts and then creates a physical object of that. And so it is essentially like the Battletoads. Like you have the Battletoads motor hover bike levels, whatever. Yeah. You're on.
It's a train car. Yeah. Effectively a little train car.
And there's like 4 lanes, dividers and stuff, and you gotta jump from lane to lane. There's enemies coming through. And it's like a few minutes long. It's set to music. It's sent to like some like synthwave kind of shit.
Yeah, and it's very like I don't know, like Blade Runner kind of lighting. You know what I mean?
It's very cyberpunk with it's all synthwave neon bullshit, but it's so much fun.
That track is, I'm sure it's on YouTube, but it's on I believe it's Petri or Petri Alenko. He's the guy that did a lot of the music for it. It's on his SoundCloud. It's a cool song. Yeah. Like you just want to listen to it. It's like excellent background music. It's really exciting. But that was so fucking sick.
Yeah, it was super cool. It was another thing where it was a cool change of pace for a minute.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I feel like a lot of the altered items are like a nice little break from the monotony in the game.
Yeah, it's where they really get to play with the game mechanics and offer like a new, unique challenge that isn't like the bulk of the stuff you're doing in the rest of the game, outside of those challenges and missions is it's fun combat, but it's combat.
But it's not you know what I mean? And you're like, and it's you're flying around and throwing, it's
it was just
but it doesn't feel like that all the time.
And it's just very exciting. It was a very exciting part of the game.
There were some people, did you die during that?
Yeah, that's why I had to use the assist mode. I died so many times, in fact.
I died once.
That I got frustrated.
Granted,
by it.
this is like
I had a really hard time with it.
I was beefed up. Like I was.
I was also
like, very
significantly
powerful.
less beefy than you guys, I think, because I just got the triple launch hold thing when I got to the Foundation DLC.
Like I did not.
So I was like,
Some people were saying online that the checkpoints in that area were kind of rough, and they kept having to redo like that
yeah, that
entire
was the main
section.
thing, yeah.
Which I didn't die the entire time. I was surprised. It's
You start
interesting
over
that,
from the
like,
beginning every time you die.
Yeah.
Is the frustrating part. It's like Battletoads in the sense that, which is why it really reminded me of Battletoads, was because of how fucking hard I sucked at it. It was like that. It was every time you die, oh, okay, I got to start the whole, you have to go back in, find the film thing, you know what I mean? Start the cinematic over again, go through it. And I was just like, I'm going to fucking lose it if I do this 6 more times. But it was fun, though.
It was really cool. I loved it so much.
A little aside, I noticed you really get upgrade points rapidly in the Foundation DLC
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the game.
Yeah, you're
the
right.
amount that I was able to upgrade my stuff, I was like, I felt like I was waiting forever to get 8 points to upgrade my launch ability to hold 3 objects.
Yeah, no,
and
you're
it was
super right.
pretty much
And then
immediately
they
that I was
loaded you
able to
up.
get that.
Maybe that's why it's more spaced out, because the Foundation DLC came first. Maybe that's why it's more spaced out in the Alan
and why
Wake one.
and why the Alan Wake one seems as though it's a larger difficulty spike. You know
That could
what I
be,
mean?
yeah.
For me personally, because I did the AWE first
Right.
rather than Foundation.
There are 2 things.
Me too.
It was fucking rough.
It's brave of you to admit that. There was 2 things that I think I've mentioned in our previous videos before that were tied, or they were kind of like resolved, or like had their final piece in the Foundation DLC, and both of them were documents that you could find. There is the woman who calls into the America Tonight, or America Underground, the radio station.
I can't remember what it's called.
Not Coast to Coast AM.
That's certainly not right. I think it's America Underground or America
America Overnight.
Yeah, there we go. I was getting there.
America Underground sounds like I don't know, like some fucking Twitter anarchist that has like his
faction.
shitty ass fucking like his Twitch podcast where
I bet it's
him and other
cool.
armchair
Guess this week, Hassan.
philosophers talk about the system.
She calls in, and she's the one that talks about her husband being transfixed on this. I don't remember what the item was in particular, but it turned his eyes green. You guys remember this one? And they get more information from her. Did you guys find the note from this guy in the astral plane? Dude, that was one of the first.
Well, explain for people who.
Yeah, it's like fill
So-
everybody in.
The woman calls in. I don't remember her name, but she was from Biloxi, like Iowa or something. It was some sort of interesting name.
Biloxi?
Biloxi? Yeah.
That's a real place.
It's in Mississippi.
Okay. Well,
Irrelevant.
yeah. I remember that name.
Hey.
She calls in, and her husband is
Biloxi. I'm sorry.
there you
It's
go.
not Biloxi.
Roblox. Her husband becomes enamored with this item. It probably doesn't matter what the item was, but I think it was some sort of green thing. And she would wake up in the middle of the night, and he'd be staring at it, and he was losing his mind. And she said when he looked at her, his eyes had turned green when they previously were brown. And then I believe he mysteriously either disappeared or, yeah, he just mysteriously disappeared. She didn't know where he was. So she contacted the radio, and obviously they extracted their information for the FBC, and then covered it up with it was the aliens. But in the astral plane, in like the most unexpected place, there was no. I didn't expect it to be here. I didn't expect to see anything else. That's one of the first radio things that I think I found in the entire game. And then right towards the end, you find a note. And I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was from the perspective of her husband saying like, the green thing is bad. I don't understand what's going on to me. I'm trying to find my wife. Please help me or something.
Effectively pleading to her, being like, I don't know why I can't stop. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know what.
But was he implying that he went to the astral plane?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
'cause
believe it
that's
was
where
implying that he became trapped in the astral plane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Literally, this is one of the first things that I experienced in the game, so I'm a little hazy on it. But maybe there was an explosion or like a big thing that he was transported to. But that was just so cool. Like I know the Foundation DLC came out first, so
No,
if
there's
I-
a couple things throughout the game where I was like, oh, they followed up on this.
Yeah.
That's great. In both DLCs.
Was
Oh,
there-
absolutely.
Was there anything you guys noticed while I try to remember what the second one was?
No, I noticed that one for sure because it took me a moment to remember what that was about because I was like, oh, this guy, I feel like it seemed as though it was referencing something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had to kind of dig back into my memory and be like, oh yeah, that dude was obsessed with something. Then I can't totally remember what the fuck was going on though.
Did you find any of the cats?
I found a cat.
You found one.
Googled it and said, not worth my time.
I found 4.
I can't believe I had no idea. Like I had no idea.
Did you find any?
I saw 2, but I was just like, that's cat. And I just
I
kept
only
going.
found like the most obvious one, which
You
was
didn't
down
interact
like
with
the.
No, the one on the fire break.
Yeah.
I found that. I tried to shoot it. I couldn't do anything to it.
You can interact with it.
I think maybe I wasn't pressing the right button. I was like, okay. I was
Pretty
like,
sure
You can just press A and
interact
it
button.
just does.
Yeah, you just hit you walk up to it like you're walking up to a door.
maybe I did that then. I
You
remember.
didn't
I
find
remember
another
it.
one?
No. Was there an obvious one that you thought in the foundation?
Right. You know how all around the nail there's just like a fucking void.
Yeah.
If you hover around there, there's like
Go down.
You can go down, you go up and
can
around.
up and
There's
around,
there's a bunch of shit to find there, and it's like it's
Yeah.
kind of scary because you're like right over this like
Precipice.
enormous just
I
like
made the mistake
hole
of
in nowhere.
in the it's the final mission before you fight his corrupted marshal, where they just tell you to go to the base of the nail, and I felt really dumb afterwards because if you just turn around, there's literally like a little hole directly in front of the nail that you're clearly supposed
Were
to
you
hop
going
down.
actually down?
I went behind the nail and I did that. I
did the
scaled
same
down.
thing.
I scaled down the walls
I
and
did
There's a
the
lot of
hole
goodies.
first.
There's
until
a lot
I
of
got to the
goodies down
bottom, and
there.
I killed myself.
Oh, no.
Because I was like.
Did you just jump in?
I was like, maybe it's just you hop in and this is like a quick like.
Oh, leap of faith.
You know what I mean? And then like it's a cutscene or whatever, or it like you just you think you're gonna die, but you just keep going, and then you just die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell?
But no, I went down there. I didn't go up and around or anything or explore more than that, but.
There was tons of stuff to find there. And fortunately, I did remember the second thing that I brought up, so that's not going to be a loose end. I meant to say it earlier, though. With that camera that we went on the crazy Battletoads ride with, that camera is the object that created that VHS that guy in the podcast reviewed, that they then took into custody and interrogated about it.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
You find all that right around the same time.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You find the notes.
It's all
like,
leading up to the mission.
No,
you
I
find
remember
the notes leading up to you finding the.
It's kind of like a trail.
Camera.
Really?
Yep. It gives the game's very good at foreshadowing itself, I think. Without like outright being like, this is what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but they do a really good job of like kind of giving you like little.
Similar to Alan Wake.
Yes.
Maybe it
It's
was
almost,
doing that. The way I
like
remember
they're written.
the way
Though who knows how you found this stuff? Though,
the way I
you know?
Yeah, 'cause-
perceive it is that like I
Well, the thing
remember
is-
that from forever ago, and then I'm like, oh, this was the camera.
Well, the thing is too with that game is there's plenty of moments where like I found notes like specifically with the X-ray object of power, where I found the notes talking about it, found the room where I was like I can go in here, and then I was like I got to keep doing the main mission for now.
Oh yeah, you
And
Yeah.
ignored it for a bit, and then came back to it. So you could have just
you can
as
get
easily.
a third of the way through the trail and then just go off. But
Yeah.
essentially, yeah, there's a podcast you find where a guy's reviewing movies. It's very goofy. It's very authentic to like a, I don't know. You probably have a friend who has a not very good podcast. It's
I don't know
maybe
anybody.
someone you went to high school with.
I don't know about that.
It's, you know,
Oh,
it's
roasted.
really it's very authentic, and the guy is detained by the FBC, and they're like, wow, "Why'd you get this?" And he's like,
he's like,
"I don't know,
"I
I just
just-
fucking found it. I don't
Yeah.
fucking know.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a movie. I'm sorry."
I just review shitty movies.
And I don't want to, you know, this is almost irrelevant, but the humor in that I really appreciated that. It's
Yeah.
very similar to the humor in Control.
This is Control.
Oh my god, that's insane. So I was playing Control the whole time?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It's very similar to some of the humor in Quantum Break.
Oh, okay.
And it was just nice because every once in a while, the Remedy games do get so goofy and self-aware in a very like, in a way that I think is really funny, maybe even funnier in the context of these serious story arcs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the there's a really great movie script you find throughout the entirety of Control. Or Quantum Break. I'm sorry. There's an employee that of the big mega corporation in that game that leaves the bits of his script around, and it was very similar humor to me, and the absurdity of it, and the dumbass guy.
It's that was one of my favorite parts of the game, is finding like the dead letters that were just preposterous.
Oh, yeah, those are really
especially
funny.
in the early game, like until like halfway through.
Because my toes keep talking.
Yeah, I still think about that. That's very funny. Because kind of up until that point, there was a couple moments here and there, but you're just like, well, these guys are floating. This is so scary. I'm gonna be killed by
quite
these
that
monsters.
like absurdist, you know what I mean? And it was very. I like that. That's
Lots
my
of
sense of humor.
That was a standout one, but there's tons that were just like this rocks. Yeah, it was very funny.
So that's essentially the foundation. I mean, obviously, there's got to be things we're missing because the game, and we've been talking about the game for 7 hours.
And there's without a doubt things that, I mean, like hop in the comments and let us know what we forgot. You know,
There's definitely somebody has completed this game in the same runtime that we've been filming.
Oh, I
videos
guarantee. I
about.
think the game is less overall play hours.
Without speed, I'm saying without speed running. Some guy was like, "Yeah, let's play through the game. It was cool."
Yeah.
Before we go, though, the one thing that I was thinking at one point was, is Ash the former somehow? But it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't entirely make sense. Well, I
can't connect that dot.
Well,
No.
I meant Ash Senior. If somehow he died, shut
It
up.
almost make
If some-
They were agreeing
more
with
sense
you.
to me if like Northmoor was, because
Well, Northmoor's still in our realm.
Yeah, he's
well,
still
is
around.
he alive?
That's
He
what I'm not
moves
sure.
around.
Oh, in the videotapes you can see him moving.
Yeah, I know. But that's
Do you
not
see
like-
him? I know that sounds silly, but like, whoa, what is it? Is he just like a fire guy?
You just see like almost like a thermal image of a human form.
Oh, okay, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
he's
finally
still here.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it could be. Yeah.
But that's
It wouldn't
another
make sense for
sort
it to be him to me. Oh,
Yeah,
it
based
could
on-
be. Yeah, if you broke away and then.
Well, but also based on the timeline of like the paintings of the former, you know what I mean, in the oldest house, it's almost kind of.
Yeah, but you don't know. Like I thought he said those paintings, some of them were just like completely fresh, like totally new.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also he
recall
also
it's-
mentioned that it seemed as though it was like a timeline almost, a story of.
It's hard to say.
He also didn't place any of those where in the timeline they were though.
So that's true.
Huge
So-
question. Does the Bureau communicate with Northmoor still? Because I understood that
No,
he was still alive
he's
to some
not.
capacity.
No.
Is he just? Do you think he's just bonkers? Like he's beyond speech?
I'm assuming that he's just gone. He's just gone.
Yeah.
But
He's hot-headed.
Brain dead.
beyond all
Yeah.
that, something that you see in the AWE expansion, there is a brief clip that plays at the head and tail of the expansion where you see, like an image of a deer and it's like, oh, you know what I'm talking about? Like there's the weird little film blips.
Freaking saw this, yeah, because you mentioned it.
So there's a map of Bright Falls. On the map, there's a little sticky note and it says, like, Cult of the Tree.
Okay.
And it's like as someone's making notes about this thing.
yeah.
Given the implication that we understand there's a great possibility that the oldest house was at one time a tree,
Yes.
and we understand that there is a strong paranatural connection between Ati as a caretaker of the oldest house. Mm-hmm. And almost like we were even talking in our previous videos how he seems like you get orders from the board, but you also get orders from Ati, and he almost seems like he supersedes the board.
Yeah.
In the sense that like
I
he is
love Ati.
definitely connected to the oldest house.
Oh,
in some
without a
way.
doubt, yeah.
And maybe even not even connected to the FBC so much as he came with the house.
He almost feels like an entirely separate entity.
Right.
Because it feels as though not only do you have to answer to him, but it doesn't feel as though he answers to anybody.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
But he does. But he is the caretaker of the oldest
Yeah, he's
house.
doing all the upkeep
That's
constantly.
one thing to think about. He vacations in Watery. Watery being the neighboring town to Bright Falls, where the events of Alan Wake occurred.
Yes.
So if nearby, it looks like the Cult of the Tree sticker, the post note is almost right over Watery, in my understanding of where it is on the map. It's in that region at
Can I
least.
interject briefly?
Sure.
Ati is the name that's given to a Norse god of water in stories. I know that sounds vague, but it's because it is. Ati, the god of water, it takes multiple different forms, different stories. Just as Thor may not be the same Thor in every single, just like Spider-Man. Spider-Man isn't the same in every single iteration. Ati is usually some sort of god of water.
Yeah,
And I
water
think-
or fisherman or we talked about this in our first video.
and he's in watery, and I think where you're leading into is his
Well, let's let Matt get there.
involvement.
All I'm saying is that there's a paranatural connection between all these things.
But there's
And then
the
there's
symbolism of a
watery.
tree, water. Water fuels a tree.
Well, I don't know about that. Water fuels a tree, I guess.
There's
I'm
something.
not getting that simple with it. What I'm saying is,
I thought that
it's
was
not
extremely
just
deep.
the symbology of water and trees, earth, air, water, trees.
The Fire Nation.
What I'm trying to say is, this cult of the tree. You know, the FBC talks several times throughout the game about other paranatural groups that. At one point, they say like, I don't think he turned on us. I don't remember who they're talking about. Fuck. I wish I remember who they were talking about. They're
What's
talking
the
about,
rest of it?
One of the I think it's corresponds between a director and maybe the investigations. They're saying that they don't think that so and so turned on the FBC and isn't working with some other entity or some other force or whatever.
But he's acting against them in some way.
Yeah, there was something where it was part of the paranoia of the investigations era. But I guess what I'm getting at is, we know there's other groups.
Yes.
And so if there's a cult of a tree, and they show this image twice very briefly, but it's the kind of thing where I'm going, oh, that has to mean something.
There's significance to it if it's repeated, yeah.
And we know that the oldest house could have been a tree at some point. Are there people who are aware of the oldest house and see the FBC as almost like, if they worship the oldest house, they worship this ancient tree.
Oh, they're interfering.
Is the FBC interfering with that? Has the FBC kind of like, taken over?
Yeah, or corrupted it.
Yeah,
or,
their god or
asserting their will onto
It's a
it.
fair question, yeah.
I can't say anything about it other than I thought it was very interesting. There was this
that's a
this
force that
cult
they
of
have.
the tree.
There's a lot of tree symbolism throughout the
Right.
whole game, because even when you walk up to the big massive stone structures in the Foundation to enter the astral plane
have
to
the-
fix the nodes, they have the old tree, the rune of the tree on there.
Right.
And that's interesting because that's kind of like a... Until then, it seems as though you either pull the switch, you know what I mean, or the board sends you right into...
Yeah.
Right.
the
So
astral
if
plane.
these nodes have the tree on them and they're this ancient thing, it's like I'm just wondering if the cult of the tree is directly related to the oldest house.
There's also
It would, yeah, it's logically, you know what I mean? I don't see,
Right.
there's clearly
And if that's-
no direct reference to it other than that.
If that's
but-
happening near Bright Falls, the one thing that never gets cleared up for me, and I'm getting kind of deep into this stuff right now, so this is why it's at the end of the video for anyone who's stuck around. We don't ever understand who was kind of funding and helping Emil Hartman.
Yeah, we don't know what the darkness is. We don't know...
But beyond that, when
did he have some sort of
at the end of the comic, the psycho thriller comic, I think it's called. When everything shuts down, Hartman makes a call to someone. He's like, "Well, I got to wrap up, things here. Can I? He's basically looking to move operations."
who the fuck was he talking to?
Yeah, who was he talking to? But it implies that he is a paracriminal, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
It implies that he was in touch with some other para-utilitarian organization that was either overseeing him or funding him in some way.
I'd say using him, because if you listen to his arrogance when he's talking in the interrogation, where he's like, he really doesn't comprehend how they could arrest him for this and how any of what he's done is
True.
bad. So I think Hartman's really just a tool, ultimately. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. And
Yeah.
he says that he's worked with other people, he's worked alone,
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if maybe the cult of the tree is also connected in some way to what was going on at the lodge. It's all stuff I
Yeah.
can only speculate
'Cause
on.
maybe
Big brain
there's-
scheme. We still don't know. Okay. Huge brain scheme. No, but the darkness obviously is it's meant to give powers to artists to cause them to manifest certain things, or it gives them different abilities. But Alan Wake in the darkness uses the typewriter to manifest reality, to change reality, to like, you know what I mean, control kind of what's happening. And he starts to, obviously in the AWE DLC, affect what's happening in the oldest house and with the FBC, directly with Jesse, who's somebody who is trying to now, at this point, break kind of the connection with the board. And if you look chronologically at the Foundation happening before the AWE, the seed would already be sowed in Jesse of not knowing if she can trust the board when she began the AWE thing, which is right when Alan Wake suddenly comes into the FBC and gets involved with everything, the oldest house and everything. So ultimately, is Alan Wake even just a tool by like the Cult of the Tree or whatever to sever the ties between the board and the oldest house to save it or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is galaxy brain shit, guys.
Yeah.
No, I hear you, because the
know,
events of AWE do continue to further, like, her independence.
Yes.
You know?
And her lack of like desire to listen to the board or like acknowledge them as an actual like higher entity.
And also seeing, like, how, you know, when directors were under the orders of the board, how catastrophic it was for people.
How it seems as though it's only been downhill since,
Like,
if you look at obviously Northmoor, and then who's right? Trench was right after
Trench,
that?
yeah.
Northmoor and Trench. It's just been fucking calamity after calamity.
not been
You
great.
know what I mean? It hasn't been.
Things have not been great.
Whereas, admittedly, we know little to nothing about the history before that. It seems like it was going fine. You know what I mean? Because they're still dealing with AWEs. They're still addressing these things. You know, they're still, you know.
It seems like there is, what you're saying, there's definitely footing for potentially there's this...
I could also be making a million, you know, unrelated connections.
I do
Could
think
be.
we have some significant pieces.
so you think that that could mean something?
It does seem like there is footing there for potentially this Cult of the Tree, and this is me just not so much galaxy braining, but big braining. Maybe they are a group that does not agree with the practices of the FBC, and they're amassing some sort of force to attack, and kind of take over or just destroy the FBC and allow them to do it.
And that's all assuming that the tree is the same tree as is the oldest house,
Yes,
and that the
that
oldest
he's
house even
referencing
is a
this.
tree.
And that it's
Yeah.
even, yeah,
Or that it was a tree.
There's a
or
lot
that they're,
of-
if it was that they're aware of that or what's going on.
And
yeah.
I'm going on literally maybe like one frame of animation that says Cult of the Tree, and also
Yeah.
Which
like
then we immediately took to be like,
one document in the game that says, there was a tree here at one time.
not to be
Yeah.
that guy though, but that's kind of their MO.
I know.
A little bit is to put like
It's
you're like,
to
well,
reward-
if you look 10 years ago, because like it's
Yeah.
not going to be necessarily the next game they come out with where you'll find this resolution. It could be like 8 years down the road
Yeah.
when the
Right.
licensing has been sold 3 times again, and now they're like, oh, we brought, don't worry though, we got Alan Wake back.
If that does pay off, that's going to be incredibly, like, we're going to, all 3 of us are like, "Ugh!"
Yeah.
we figured it
I
out.
can't wait to do a 10-hour video on all that. But I mean, that's just something I wanted to bring up at the end here because it's been on my mind. Is if this is the tree, is that the tree the cult is around, and given the
Exactly.
connection between Ahti, Watery, Ahti, the oldest house, the cult at maybe being in Watery, the oldest house being a tree. Was there any other things that you guys wanted to bring up or speculate on before we close things out? Any
I'll be
other,
honest, that's the biggest brain moment I've had this entire time experience
came
with
to
this
life.
game or anything. Yeah,
I
like me
have-
making all those connections right there, I was like,
I saw your steam coming out of your
yeah,
ears.
I was rock hard the whole time.
You're going to go home and tell your girlfriend, like,
I gotta change my
was-
pants.
I was really smart about Alan Wake on Control today.
And she won't
said,
give a
say,
shit.
That's
I hope
good.
things get better for you.
Is there anything you want to
Did
do?
you have anything?
There is the only other thing, and I don't have any exact. Like, it's very amorphous, but they have mentioned the Blessed or Bless, that kind of group or organization a lot, and like I want to know where that leads. I'm almost thinking there's like Thomas Zane is involved in some way. There, to anybody that didn't see it, they mentioned. They mentioned, yeah, right? They mentioned this sometimes production company, sometimes other kind of company. They're all united by having bless or blessed
Well, it was
in their name.
What's the guy's name? Like Charles Bless or something. Like
Yeah.
There's like it's basically a para-criminal organization, but
Operating-
para-criminal as defined by the FBC. That's the other thing
Yeah.
to mention
Yes.
is that
Are they the
when
ones that are,
when the FBC does it, it's good.
Yeah.
When anyone else does it, they're
It's like any
terrorists.
government organization,
Yeah.
though. You know what I mean? It's the whole idea where, like, if we install a military dictatorship in this country, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you do it, it's a war crime, and we're going to nuke
We're
you.
gonna destroy
You know what I
everybody.
mean? But then, lost my train of thought. Sorry.
All right, they're the ones
think-
that have been responsible for some of the.
Oh yes, were they the ones that were creating their own objects of power?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I forgot the name of them. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
But
So I want to
And
know.
that the jukebox is
the
related
subway
to that.
was also them as well, correct? The
I
subway
believe
train,
so.
the train car that you find. Do you
I'd
have
be
to
surprised if
investigate?
it wasn't because
I'm
they do
pretty
say-
confident
the
it
one
is.
in AWE.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not sure it was the same group.
Oh
don't
my god, it was
recall
definitely
anything.
a parallel.
It was. It was a
Yeah.
pair of criminal organizations, but I don't think it
Uh-huh.
was the same one. But they also.
I don't recall anything that
do you
specifically.
remember the episode of America Overnight where they're like, oh, a package. What is this? And then they're like, oh shit, what the fuck? Ah, and
Yeah.
they basically sent them like a paranatural bomb or something. I don't
okay.
know what it was. They sent them exactly. I can't remember the exact item.
Yep.
But
He's like, Karen.
it was like it was the Blessed group. Like I think they understood the connection between America Overnight and the FBC, and they were like attacking them.
What? How do you know that it
okay.
was them? Or you think that was the case?
I'm pretty sure it's explained.
Oh, okay.
The stuff with that group, and I think I want to say it's Charles Bless. I could be wrong.
There was definitely.
I think
a
it's
guy.
Papa Bless.
Everything having to do with that group is it's not really spelled out for you.
No.
It's really spread throughout the game and very disconnected. But I did go through and kind of like amass all the documents and review them together. And then there is a great video, I believe by Gaming University, that kind of goes through all
Yeah.
of the whole history of that group and like their connections.
Oh, cool.
And
I
that was
didn't
really
see that.
eye-opening to be like, wow, like, you know, I caught on to most of this, but when they present all the information together, you get a much more clear picture. And it is something where I would love in a future game to explore that idea more, because the idea of it could be so cheesy, it could be real, it could be done so wrong, but it is exciting.
It'd be cool to see something game from the perspective of that group.
Yeah.
As though
Especially
you're,
if they are-
even if you're just like a peon in it, or if you're somebody, you know, whatever it may be. But like you said, it has really the possibility to fall into like the trope
Yeah.
of we're the underdog. This is a revolution. You know
It's
what I mean?
entirely
Like,
Yeah, I'm
possible
thinking of
that-
like the the synth, the Underground
the railroad,
and
yeah,
fucking
the
Fallout
railroad
4.
and Fallout
Yeah.
4. They're like, we're
God,
not the Underground Railroad.
I couldn't
We're
get-
underground
it-
and we're the railroad.
It couldn't be
We have
any
the
more
lights.
like fake woke.
Oh
like,
my
Yeah.
god, yeah, 100%. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
It'd be really compelling to see, like,
So bad.
especially if they don't have a malicious intent, but the bureau perceives and colors it as such.
Yeah,
You know, maybe that train thing. If that was them, they are like, that's a tragedy to them. They didn't intend on killing all those people.
Right,
But,
you are only getting one side of these narratives,
Yeah.
except for the America Overnight thing, where they did essentially. I think that was a terrorist act.
Yeah, that was 100%. But I mean, like, it's one of those things where, and this is getting into like 100% personal opinion, and maybe it can be cut out. But it's kind of the idea of like, is it really like, where we were saying, where it's like, yeah, you install a coup in another country. Is it wrong of them to then like rebel against that coup? Are they
Right.
evil then for killing those people? Like, yeah, it's evil to kill people, but like,
If they're responding to being killed,
yeah, if like if
just
that's
because like we're the
if
government,
it's
we said
survival,
so.
yeah. If they're like, if
Hey,
yeah,
you
it's
got a
hard to-
point there. You got a point there.
There's a lot of recurring dynamics, I think, in the Remedy universe. So, here's a big brain. I'm willing to bet that the arc that we follow in whatever this area is going to echo, to use one of Matt's terminology, some event that we've already seen in the universe.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Oh yeah, like that. It could be the result of something that they had already done.
Or like, yeah, how like history repeats itself in some regards. Like, but then I also feel like I'm saying a thing that happened could happen.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, but it could. It could. You know.
You could find out a major event is Like, you could find out that the actual reason that the hiss, you don't even escaped, was the Blessed somehow sabotaging something going on, you know, and that would be a cool development.
There's a lot we could speculate on, but hey,
all day, really.
I think that's a good place to end things.
Yeah.
We've said so much about Control.
I'm not ready to let it go.
We never even talked about the side missions or anything in the main game, really. I mean, there's so many. I would say, you know, the only one we're talking about is the one where you sing to the plants.
That was fun.
I'd say all the other ones kind of pale in comparison.
Not really worth your time so much.
No, I wouldn't even do them.
There's the AWE one where you put the light on the plants.
Yeah, and that one I thought was a sad imitation of the one where you sing to the plants. You know,
it's not nearly as
not
fun.
quite as compelling.
A lot harder to find.
You know, I mean, so much could be said about the game,
and we've said a lot already.
You know, I do think in a near future episode of Flipping Through, we'll look at the Art of Control, the Making of Control book as well, which is extremely eye-opening.
What the hell is this?
Oh, is this for? I don't even remember what I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted. But yeah, I mean.
Well, hopefully in the future you'll make a Flipping Through. That's what you were saying.
Well, obviously I said that, but I don't know. I feel unresolved. I think maybe you guys understand what I mean. It's just there's so much to be said, and even in our 7-hour journey, we still didn't say it all. So feel free, please leave a comment with your thoughts. Thanks for anyone who has stuck through all 7 hours.
It's no longer Waketober. But
it's no longer Waketober.
It was a really great run. Maybe if stuff comes out, we can do another one next year.
I'm going to veto that idea right now.
All right.
Hopefully you'll just see more Remedy Games content in the future from this channel.
Yeah, for sure.
Down the pipe.
Yeah, and we got plenty of other things. If you think Remedy sucks, don't worry. We cover so many other types of games, and I think that's really all I can say. And if you want to help out the channel, sure, like and subscribe, comment. But you know the thing that would really help the most is just share our videos with people who you think might like them.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing you can do for us is tell a friend to check it out, and when they clearly aren't going to click on the links that you send them, as has been illustrated by anyone I know, just keep doing it. Eventually they will break down, and maybe they'll even think that they were the ones that found Hidden Machine. And
yes, gaslight your friends into believing.
Yes, I think that's a very powerful technique. So if you need any tips on how to gaslight your friends, just send us an email, hiddenmachinegaming@gmail.com, and we'll see you in the future.
Stay safe out there, gamers.
Bubsy-tober?
Oh, I would do that.
All right.
I'd prefer Gextober.
I would do that too.
Oh, we shouldn't do that. We'll get canceled for that one. What's your shirt?
Is
that your buddy?
Yeah,
Eric
it's my
Hagen?
buddy's art. It's not
Eric Hagen.
Eric Hagen.
This is him.
No!
He's been involved in
Wait, why would Gex get you
horrible
canceled?
accidents.